Guys, welcome back to another episode of the Sober Spartan podcast. I'm your host, as always, Andrew Nichols. And in this episode, I want to talk about what made me want to get sober in the first place. So, for me, the decision to get sober was a gradual one that took place over a long period of time. It wasn't just some sudden thing that I decided to do. I mean, looking back and listening to other people's stories, usually there's a tipping point where something big happens and they're like, okay, now it's time to get sober. But it's because of a compounding effect of all the shit that led up to that point. So that's pretty much what happened for me. It was just a buildup of all that stuff that I was doing during my drinking that like caused enough pain for me to actually take action and move forward, right? And I thought about getting sober like years before I actually did. And in the moment, I didn't even think that not drinking was an option because everyone around me drank at the time and it was so socially acceptable. I just figured that all the shit that was happening in my life was just something normal because all my friends, same shit. They were doing dumb shit when they were drunk, ruining relationships, in financial ruin, bad health outcomes, stuff like that. And so to me, it was just all normal, right? And I didn't even know that like not drinking was a possibility for me at the time. Like looking back, I think that's like silly, but again, it's like hindsight 2020. Like you don't realize it when you're in the moment, right? So in the beginning, when I started drinking around 13, it was all fun and games, right? Like it's like something new. I felt like drinking alcohol was like almost like a cheat code for being social because at the time I was really socially awkward. I wasn't able to start or carry on a conversation to save my life, right? So when I drank alcohol, all that stuff went away. And so that's kind of what kept me coming back to it time and time again is because like when I wanted to go out and be social and stuff like that, it made everything easier, right? So I definitely used it at the time as a tool, but then I think as like if you've been drinking for any period of time, it always starts out good, right? Like it's never a problem until it is. So um eventually it started getting to a point where I was drinking and every single time that I drank, I woke up either like having to apologize to somebody, I was injured, I spent money I didn't have, I was losing my property like my phone, stuff like that. I was getting into fights, um, doing stuff that like I'm ashamed to even admit that I did. Like we used to do shit like fence bowling, which was we'd get drunk and then run and like shoulder our way through a fence. It just like disgusting stuff like that I would never fathom doing now, that I did when I was younger. But then as I got further into my drinking career, it started to evolve into now I'm doing drugs every time I drink, right? Like in the beginning, I didn't really do too much drugs at all. Just every now and again, like I experiment with different things. I think like most people, I started drinking before I started smoking weed, and then we started doing, me and my group of friends, we started doing like different things like ecstasy, cocaine, stuff like that. I never got into the harder stuff like heroin or the meth or anything like that, but the ecstasy we were getting was obviously pressed with different stuff. And I'd be doing a lot of that. But closer to the end of it, it would get to a point where every time I drank, whether it was a couple beers or whatever, then I'd be going out and wanting to get some cocaine or I'd be proactive and pick it up before I was drinking, right? Like I wouldn't say that I had a drug problem per se, only because I only did drugs when I drank. And when I stopped drinking, I didn't even think about the drugs again after that. But it ended up becoming a problem in my life because so I was getting more in debt. I was like I mentioned before, I was doing stupid shit that I wouldn't normally do if I was sober. Like pushing people away, saying dumb shit to people that I shouldn't have said, stuff like that. Doing retarded stuff and injuring myself, and it started happening more and more and more and more and more, right? So it was the buildup of all these things, and I kind of wanted to share this story because like if I would have heard somebody go through the kind of process it took before they got to a point where um, they decided to get sober, I think I would have got sober sooner than I did, right? Because like in the moment, you like, especially when you're that young, you don't really have that much life experience. like you don't even know what's possible, right? You don't even know it's a thing. Like, because I used to always think that like people who didn't drink were weird or something like that, right? Like, I just couldn't relate it with my head because it was so socially acceptable, and every single person in my life um, was drinking to excess, right? So just like hearing stories like this would have helped me so much. That's why I wanted to share, because like eventually it gets to a point where it becomes unmanageable. But I really think that it helps that you hit your rock bottom before you move forward, but it doesn't have to be that way. So you can do that from learning from other people's experience. And that's kind of what, like, when you hear the word wisdom thrown around, like, you're a wise person if you're able to listen to other people's experience and be able to not make those same mistakes, right? So I want to share with you mistakes that I think I made looking back, right? So, and there's a couple other things, like towards the end of it too. I would just get drunk, and then I was hanging out with a group of friends that I wanted to go get some cocaine, right? So, one of my buddies is like, okay, just ride this bike and you can go, because I had to go to the other side of town. And so, I got on the bike. There was a problem though. The bike didn't have brakes. Of course it didn't. Why would it have brakes? And so what he said he did is he stuck his foot in the front tire, like on the side, against the metal frame. So then the tire would rub against the bottom of his shoe. And I was like, okay, well, that sounds like it works. Obviously, I wasn't thinking. I was drunk at the time. But I said, screw it, let's go. So I put some earphones in, I threw on some Metallica, and I just let it rip. And I biked all the way to the other side of town. Everything was fine. Like, every time I needed to brake, I would just brake way before I needed to, put my foot in there. It was fine. On my way back, same thing. Everything was fine until I was like cruising on the road the house was on. I went by and I saw the house right beside me, and it was like I went to go brake, but I went really fast this time, right? Instead of like slowly doing it. So I just put my foot there, and it sucked my foot in this way. So it hit in front of the tire, and I ended up flipping, and I landed on my shoulder and really messed up my shoulder. What it ended up being was an AC joint separation in my shoulder. That's why you can kind of see that bump there if you're listening to the video. If you're not listening to the video, I have a bump on my shoulder from that accident. And so I ended up staying a bit longer, and the next day, like, I literally couldn't put my shirt on. Like, I had to like struggle to get my shirt on, and like I didn't put this arm through. And I went to the hospital. I had to get a sling, stuff like that. And that was like closer to the end of before I decided to get sober. And it was things like that. I was always injuring myself, like, and it was just happening more and more and more. And I was making stupider and stupider decisions with the things that I was doing. I was like picking fights with my friends for no reason, and like, I not even remembering half of it, right? Because then I would be drinking so much that I would black out, or then I'd do drugs to try to level myself out, and then I'd be staying up like almost every weekend, the whole weekend, going nuts, and then we'd be doing dumb shit. Like, one of the last weekends that I spent with the friend of mine that I got sober with, we ended up pretty much going on a bender all weekend. We ended up hot wiring a friend's vehicle, mom's vehicle, taking that for a drive, and then we were shooting it with shotguns, right? Like, it's just dumb stuff. Looking back, it's like, why the hell would I be doing that stuff, right? So, but yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts around like the buildup of deciding to become sober. I don't think that it's usually just any one thing. Like I said, it's just the straw that broke the camel's back that ends up leading to the sobriety. And then another thing I kind of want to note, and I've talked about this before, so if you've listened to this podcast, you'll have heard me talk about this. But typically, and I've seen this all over the place, it's really rare that somebody tries to get sober one time and then it just sticks. So if that's you and you're coming in and out and you're like getting sober for a period of time and then going back out and drinking and stuff, that's completely normal. But just remember, like, don't beat yourself up and just keep coming back and keep at it, because eventually you're going to get to that point and it's just going to stick. Something's going to click in your mind. Like, for me, another thing that was really important was going to AA meetings and hearing other alcoholics talk about their journey, and then things clicked with me because when I first got in there, and again, this is stuff I've talked about before. I thought AA was like a cult, stuff like that, and my literal intention was to learn how to drink in moderation, and then start drinking again after the first year. But then once I started listening to other people's stories, and how they got sober and then they went back to drinking, and everything in their life just ended up getting worse than it was before in the first place, from going back. And it was like, okay, maybe if one person says it, it's like, whatever. But if you're hearing person after person after person after person with lots of years of experience say stuff like that, it's like, for me, it's just stuff started clicking, right? So that's why I just like to share as much as I can about my story, because I know the power of a story. And if it could be just one little thing that you take from it that clicks in your mind, that helps you get sober, helps you stay sober, that can make a big difference, right? So, because I know that's exactly how it was for me, right? I didn't, you don't know what you don't know. So, and just you listening to this podcast, I don't know if you had times in sobriety under your belt already, or you're just getting started, but just immersing yourself and being around other people that are doing what you're doing, which is trying to stay sober, right? It's a battle, and then it doesn't have to be overcomplicated or super hard. I mean, it's not easy, but like a lot of people like to overcomplicate things and stuff like that. But the thing is, it's not as simple as just simply stopping drinking. And one of the things that I kind of related in my life, because I spent a lot of time around farmers and fishermen. I come from a little town, Ladner. It's a fishing farming town. And what I've seen in those two industries was, if you wanted to start getting into farming or fishing or something like that, you had to make it a lifestyle. And if you didn't, it just didn't work out. And then I look at sobriety and I'm like, okay, these people aren't making their sobriety their lifestyle, like the way that they live now. And they want to live their life the way that they've always lived their life and expect a different result. Right. And again, this is something that keeps coming up because I think, again, it's super, super important. It's the insanity of it. It's doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Right. And you need to make it your lifestyle of sobriety. So if you're hanging around friends and all you did with those friends was drink, then you need to take a step back and kind of look at your group of friends and kind of ask yourself, like, are these my real friends? Like, do they got my back even now that I'm getting sober? Or were they people that I just called and hung out with to go drink, do drugs, whatever? Because I know for me, when I first got sober, and I'm not saying these people are bad or anything like that, but it just, what I was doing didn't align with like my relationship with them. Like I literally just hung out with them to go drink and get drunk, and stuff like that. So then when I got sober, it was just like organically that it happened, that the calls and hanging out just got less and less and less. Right. And it hurt in the beginning because I thought like, oh shit, like, am I not a good friend? Like I thought it was me. But that just goes back to how socially acceptable drinking is and stuff like that. It's like pretty much all I did to go be social was go out and drink. Right. But the thing is, you don't need to drink to go and be social, right? You can go out and hang out with people and stuff like that. But it's something you're going to need to do consistently on a daily basis and learn new skills to go like meet new people or have a conversation or anything like that. Because I'm a super introvert, right? So sparking conversation and going and being social is not something that comes naturally. It's something that I have to get out of my comfort zone and actually pursue, to be able to do. But like at the end of the day, as humans, we're social animals, and we need to be socially active, right? Even if it's not every day, you need to have some sort of social interaction to live a healthy life. Like for me, I can probably live just here in my own house, not seeing another or talking to another person for years, and it probably wouldn't bother me. But I know that, like, being an introvert, it is a little bit draining sometimes when I go and be socially active out there. But at the end of the day, it's like, oh, okay, I went and hung out with people. I had some conversations. I did something that was kind of out of the normal for me. And you learn how to have conversations with people, how to connect with people and stuff like that. Because it's like, if you want to go far, you go in a group. That's what the saying is, right? Like, you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with a group. So I think it's important to have some sort of aspect of being social, especially in the beginning, because in the beginning you're going to want to surround yourself with like-minded people, other people that are looking to get sober as well. So that's why like I would always say like start if you're just starting out, go to groups like AA, because then you're around other people, you can hear their stories, listen to podcasts like this, you can hear my stories. I'm going to have some people on pretty quick here, and they're going to share their stories as well. And then because all it takes is just one thing to click. So anyways, I kind of went a little off on a tangent there, but basically the whole point is just everyone's journey is going to be different. So you're going to have to try to figure shit out for yourself. But I hope that you took this and maybe something resonated with you that pushes you to action and take the next steps of getting on your journey of sobriety, right? So anyways, that's all I have for you for this episode. I appreciate you tuning in. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. Go follow me on social media. I talk about this stuff on those other channels as well. So anyways, I'll see you next week on another episode of the Sober Spartan.